So you did your research and you decided that vaccines weren't for you. Here's the thing. That word research means a little bit different thing to me versus you. Let me give you an example. I've been asked to review some of the claims made by a notorious anti-vaccine lawyer, Aaron Siri. And we'll see what the difference is between a lawyer does his vaccine and science research and when an actual scientist and expert does it. So here's a very long document made by that law firm claiming corruption and harm done by the current vaccination schedules, including COVID-19. And right as we get into it, he calls into doubt the current vaccines and the vaccines that they were tested against during their clinical trials. He makes a big claim right here, talking about our current DTaP vaccine being compared to the DTP vaccine, which had infants vaccinated die at a far higher rate than their equally non-vaccinated peers. Citation 22. Big claim. A vaccine is actually causing more harm than the people who were unvaccinated. Let's check the source. So this is where real research comes in. You don't just take what they say at face value, you go and fact check them. So let's look down at citation 22 down here, and look, it's a citation to the website I Can Decide, a notorious anti-vaccine website. Give it a click. The citation is to a document created by that same law firm that was submitted to the United Nations at Geneva complaining about vaccine injury as well. When you're citing yourself as a source, that's kind of a red flag, but let's keep digging. So here he makes the claim that DTP kids were 10 times more likely to die in the first 6 months of life than those children who were unvaccinated, citing the 2017 study, source number 1, as we can see down here below. Further research brings up this study, which now we have to use our critical thinking caps and our scientific minds to determine if this is a good study or not. If we just believe the highlights, it'll say that kids who got the DTP vaccine were 5 times more likely to die than children who were unvaccinated in this study. Ironically, if they got their oral polio vaccine with the DTP vaccine, it actually decreased their mortality, which is a really strange result. But when you start to read the study, it really starts to break down. The study was performed in the 1980s with around 1,000 children given the opportunity to receive vaccines at a 3 or a 5 month weight check-in. And then they compared how many children ended up passing away in the vaccinated group versus the kids who didn't get vaccines, and then compared the oral polio group to the DTP group. One big problem is there was no true control in this study. See, some of the kids had already received their BCG or their tuberculosis vaccine, and there was no documentation of which kids did and which kids didn't, so they weren't truly unvaccinated. Then we start to look at the data tables, and the majority of the confidence intervals, meaning how confident you can be in the results, include the number 1, which, if you know anything about statistical analysis, means that if a confidence interval includes the number 1, that means those results are not statistically significant, meaning you can't make any association between the results that you're testing. Then, when you look at what the children who did pass away during the study passed away from, they were all very common causes of illness. Diarrhea, vomiting, fever, presumed malaria, diarrhea, pneumonia. Finally, and probably the linchpin in this study, of the 651 unvaccinated children, 219 had actually already received DTP or OPV before their first weighing examination. These children were counted as unvaccinated during their first weighing examination, which means the group or the unvaccinated group that you're comparing the vaccinated group to actually wasn't unvaccinated. They had just already received those vaccines before people started observing them, which means there's no study to be had because you're not comparing unvaccinated versus vaccinated kids. This is the problem when you take advice, especially medical advice, from lawyers on scientific subjects. They don't understand the science they're citing. They can't interpret it. That's not their training. And so they will bury bad studies in the reference section and then make exaggerated claims based on those bad studies. What they're going to do is make a big exaggerated claim, and then they're going to cite themselves as their source, which eventually will cite a really bad study done in the 80s that then you have to find somebody who's willing to keep digging through all those documents to then have the wherewithal to read that study and say that original study was garbage. And thus, all the citations and self-citations are garbage, and your claim is completely meaningless. This is the true sense of being able to do your own research and come to meaningful and accurate conclusions regarding healthcare decisions, not just for yourself, your children, but when you're making healthcare policy on a large scale. And this is what our current healthcare administration and administration in general is not doing. That's why when other people tell me that they did their research, it doesn't mean the same thing to me as when I did my research.